we know somebody who recognizes and knows what that pressure is like, not only at the national team level, but at the club level. I'm talking about Vinicius Jr., somebody that you guys have mentioned a couple of times, because of course he's interested in those moves that Neymar is making, but he's interested in his own moves as well, because Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, or PIF, are still interested in his services. They made contact with the Brazilian strikers representatives last month. This isn't the first time PIF have asked about Vini Jr. They reached out last summer, but made no deal with the Real Madrid star. Now, this was kind of all at the same time when the Kylian Mbappe news came out officially now with Real Madrid. Gustavo, you being in Madrid, what's the mood around Vinicius Jr. that we know still has one game in that 2-game suspension that he has?
Yeah, like I said, Cristina, what we know by sources that in the last December, Saudi Pro League, the Saudi Investment Fund, all talked to Neymar staff again, to Vini Jr. staff. Vini Jr. could be the replacement for Neymar, including in Al Hilal, because initially, last August, when the first talks started, the idea was to take Vini Jr. to Al Ahly, one of the 4 big clubs in Saudi Arabia. There was no agreement over that time, but the interest from the Saudis has never disappeared. And Vini Jr. staff is still waiting for a new contract, like this month or maybe in February, and then they are waiting for an official proposal, for an official offer. What we know also by sources is that Real Madrid initially would want only the buyout clause, 1 billion euros, but Real Madrid always try to negotiate new contracts for their star players with 2 years left in the contract. It will happen with Vinicius Jr. next June. So the idea of Real Madrid is to negotiate with Vinicius Jr. But Vinicius doesn't want a new contract now. And he wants to wait to see what's going to happen with Saudi Arabia. He really thinks to move to Saudi Arabia. The Vinicius Jr. staff thinks that, and the Saudis also think that, with 2 years over in the contract, Real Madrid would be open to negotiate, like for 400 million, 350 million, 300 million euros. It would be a negotiation between the Saudis and Real Madrid, but they are open for this move. And what we know also inside Real Madrid is that it can happen. That's not an impossible move.
What do you think about this, Shaq, that it's not an impossible move? Your face tells me everything.
Yeah, exactly, right? Listen, first of all, Vinicius Jr. continues to handle this brilliantly. I remember when that interest kind of came about and hit the headlines last summer, and there were a lot of people saying, well, Vinicius should come out and say something one way or the other, whether he's staying or whether he's interested in the move. And I thought saying absolutely nothing was the perfect response. Let it play out. You worry about your performances on the park. You let them, you'll be all right. You let Real Madrid's hierarchy and the PIF fund figure those other parts out. That's got nothing to do with you. And it keeps that interest from Saudi Arabia alive. And at the very least, it forces Real Madrid into the position of knowing that they are credible suitors, that if you want to keep the talent, you know where you are, you know where you stand, you know that player's position. So I thought, again, handled wonderfully well. And Vinicius continues to do that. Yeah. Were I in his position, I would do exactly the same. Say very little, just let it play out, and know that it's a win-win situation for one of football's brightest talents.
I could not agree more. And Vinicius Jr. is in a position right now that almost no Real Madrid player has ever been, in a position where you put the club in jeopardy of losing. Because Florentino Perez is a mastermind of being the guy who gets the free transfer. He's a mastermind of getting things to go his way when it comes to business. Now you have Vinny Jr. making the moves. Gustavo Hofman said $1 billion, and my mouth hit the floor. We're living in some wild times where Erling Haaland's getting a 10-year contract and these enormous wages, and now you're going to see Vinicius Jr. dealt for $1 billion, maybe less because his contract's going to run out and Real Madrid's going to make a decision. Do we get something for him, or do we let him leave on a free transfer? And they're certainly not going to let him leave on a free transfer. It's an era where the footballer is all of a sudden the one holding the cards, that I've never quite seen. I've not lived in. So it remains to be seen if he will be dealt, but the possibility of an entity so powerful that they're willing to say, yeah, $1 billion, I'll think about it. $500 million,
Crazy.
let's pull the trigger.
You draw an interesting parallel there. If I'm Vinicius Jr.'s representatives, I'm looking for a 10-year contract too.
Yeah.
I'm saying, listen, the brightest talent in English football in Erling Haaland just signed a 10-year contract with Manchester City. We're Real Madrid. I'm arguably, and I'm sure Kylian Mbappe will want to say differently, but I am your biggest star. My contract is running out. There's interest elsewhere. All of a sudden, that Erling Haaland deal has changed everything about negotiations for players at the top end of the tree.
Yeah, absolutely. He's only 24, by the way. I had to look it up just to remind myself that he's so young and he's looking at so much money. But we just talked about Neymar and this financial move when it comes to his age at 31, looking to go back to Brazil. When we talk about Gustavo, now his trajectory, about Real Madrid, how is this looked at when it comes to the Brazilian national team as well?
Yeah. And I have also say that his wage in Saudi Arabia, he would become the best athlete paid in the history of sport. His wage could reach like between 300 and 350 million euros per year. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on now. Vinicius, the point here, and this is the doubt that Vinicius has. He has to decide: does he want to become the best athlete paid in the history of sport, but playing in a lower level league? Playing Saudi Arabia is not the same thing. The Saudis can hire the best athletes in the world, but they will never become one of the best leagues in the world. The Saudi Arabia league will never be La Liga, will never be Premier League, Bundesliga. You have to understand that. So, talking about money exclusively, you have to say yes, because you will have the best salary in the history of sport. But when you talk about sport, and we know also that inside Real Madrid, people have talked to him. The other players, Carlo Ancelotti, they have talked to him like, don't think only about money. Think also about football. The level that you can reach as a player, playing for Real Madrid. If you go to Saudi Arabia, you won't reach this level. And this is a point that he has to understand. And like I said, this is the main doubt for Vinicius Jr. This is the main doubt. He loves Real Madrid. He likes to live here. Everybody knows the problems that has suffered here over the last years, but he really enjoys life here. He really likes to be in Real Madrid. But the offer that he can receive on the next weeks, it's huge. It's an absurd. More than 300 million euros per year.
Yeah, but I mean, look no further if you're Vinny Jr. than to your right, the guy in the center who's Kylian Mbappe, who's making all the money in the world at PSG, and he couldn't get the Ballon d'Or. He couldn't get the Champions League. There are only a few clubs like Real Madrid that can guarantee you to be on that platform, give you an opportunity to be the best in the world. And maybe with the Ballon d'Or on hand, Vinny Jr. is saying, well, I've got this. Now it's national team time, and I'm guaranteed to be on the national team type of deal. But he doesn't have that. And everybody has ego when it comes to being a footballer at that stage. There's a part of him that's thinking, I can't leave without getting something like this.
Yeah, and you would hope that with the maturity that he's shown, that you said, Shaka, about how he's handled this situation, that same maturity will go. And of course, he has an entourage surrounding him to try to make the best decision for his career at the end of the day, with so much, not only potential, but from what we're seeing now from Vinicius Jr. and what we could see from him in the following years.